Hi, Ed Ross with edsforecast.com, and I wanted to today's video give you a little understanding of when you buy real estate, how should you hold title to real estate? Um, Now, if it's your house and your principal residence, quite frankly, you would probably put it in your own name, you and your wife's name, or you'd put it in a trust if you have a trust, a living trust, and you would ultimately hold your title that way because trust actually is easier for estate planning if you should pass away. It's definitely a lot better, so you don't have to go through probate court for your children to get the property. Now, when you're in an investment real estate and you're buying something that you're renting out or that you're holding for a couple months before you sell it, or you're holding it for many years and generating income off of it, everything changes quite fast. And knowing how to um, uh, put title in that property correctly is critical to your financial foundation. And why do I say that? I say, I'll just give you an experience. I was learning after I'd already invested and became a multimillionaire. I realized that everything I bought, I put in my name, my personal name. And I was told by my attorney that was a really silly move. So, and he was a real estate attorney, and I had called him because I had an eviction and I had some work to be done. And he said, you really should consider, putting it in another form that protects you from lawsuits. And I said, well, I'm a really good guy. I don't do anything wrong. I don't have to worry about lawsuits. And any tenant that has a problem, I take care of it right away. And he said, well, why don't you read this book? And he gave me a couple books to read. And he says, why don't you look into it? He gave me some titles and just consider your options here because I think you are at risk. So I went and did some reading, and quite frankly, I realized I was at risk. I was at risk because everything was in my name. If anything should go wrong with like my property management group that was managing the property, or if I just had somebody that was lawsuit happy, and even if I did all the right moves, they were a smart individual. There are a lot of people out there that are smart criminals, and they're criminals that are white collar crime that don't get caught till they do it multiple times, can actually pretend to do a slip and fall on the property and say that they notified me 24 hours earlier that there was some oil on the driveway and I didn't do anything about it. Well, quite frankly, maybe I hired someone right away, but they came out 48 hours later, and then they pretend to have whiplash because they tripped, and they can sue. Well, I found out those things exist. I went back to my lawyer and started drafting the papers. Well, I had to do like 3 or 4 iterations because I had such a large portfolio at the time. One time I was in the lobby waiting for my lawyer, typical lawyer making me wait for him, and I was talking to another woman and I said, "What are you in here for?" She goes, "Well, I have a lawsuit for the tenant." And I said, "Well, what happened?" And the woman actually was crying, and she started to have tears in her eyes, and she said, "Well, one of my stairs on my upstairs duplex had a crack in the staircase, and I'm now getting sued for $4 million, and all I own is this one duplex, and I'm getting sued because the staircase broke, and the guy had a broken leg, and he claims he re-broke his leg, and now he can never work again, and he's suing me for millions and millions of dollars, and that's why I'm here meeting with the same lawyer." And I said, "Well, did you have your title on your property in your name?" And she goes, "Yeah." And she goes, "That was a real mistake on my part." So I was in that lobby watching this woman cry because that was the only property she owned, and here she had a multi-million-dollar lawsuit. The property couldn't be worth more than $250,000 in the area, and here she is. She had a multi-million-dollar lawsuit against her, and she was even telling me she felt the guy already had a broken leg just because he claims he got it broke worse. She doesn't believe it, but it doesn't matter. Now she has to deal with a court of her peers in a jury trial, and her insurance may only cover 1 million of it because that's the only liability policy she said she had on it. And if the guy wins a $2 or $3 million judgment, the other million goes against her, and she has to declare bankruptcy. So the sad news is that negligence or not, there is danger in not being protected. Now, how do you protect yourself? You protect yourself by putting your building in another entity. And I go into details on whether it should be a limited partnership or a limited liability corporation or a corporation. There's pros and cons to each of them and how you do it. There's extra expenses involved in it. Traditionally, I have done LLCs and LPs depending on the state. Sometimes I prefer the LP over legality purposes. I explain some of the pros and cons of that as you learn more about some of the things I do. But ultimately, you want the protection. You want it in another name. And you may even want to do some things like I did if you start creating a multi-million-dollar portfolio, and that is have offshore entities that are protections for you and other things that can ensure that your liability is limited to that property, and it cannot pierce and go to other assets that you own or anything else you own. Just smart business, smart move. And by the way, it deters people from doing these fraudulent lawsuits because they can't get much from you. So they'd only be able to fight the insurance company, and they really prefer to go after people that they can go after your house and other assets you may have, because not everybody wants a rental property. So just sound advice. If you're going to be a real estate investor, even if holding one property, consider putting it in an LLC or LP, and use that as your own protection going forward. Thank you.